be honest with yourself for a second. How much of what you're doing at work right now is actually working? That question came up again and again at Insights EDU last year. You guys already know this isn't your typical higher ed conference. And I've got to be honest, I've been to a lot of higher ed events, and Insights EDU is just different. The conversations are direct, the sessions are outstanding, and the people in the room are there to fix real problems, not defend the status quo. That's why Insights EDU 2026 matters. It's 3 days in Fort Lauderdale, February 17 to 19, focusing on real strategy for higher ed. No fluff, no recycled playbooks, just what works now. You can keep wasting time with what feels safe, or you can get in the room where smarter decisions are being made. Register today at insightsedu.com.
You just made the list!
Ellucian Live 2026 is taking place April 19th through 22nd, 2026 in Denver, Colorado. Advancing infinite possibilities. Turn innovation into action with AI-powered solutions, student-first strategies, and a global network of fellow leaders at Ellucian Live 2026, higher education's premier global technology conference. It's going to be
amazing.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you for episode 1000 and something. As you know, if you've been listening to this podcast, we recently now crested 1,200 episodes of this podcast. I've interviewed personally over 425 sitting college presidents, more than anyone in the world, and it gives me a lot of information, and I need to get that information out, or my brain, I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh, this president said this, I got to write this down. And if I don't have an outlet, then I can't survive. And so one of the outlets, you like this transition, is EdUp Editorials, and I'm plugging my own stuff here, but Elvin and I created a way for you higher ed, you people, my colleagues in higher education, to get your articles published. You know, maybe you have something that you want to write about your college or university, and it's good news. You want to go to a trade publication, maybe they won't take it. EdUp Editorials, we want the good stories. We want to push them out to our worldwide podcast audience. So get out your pen and paper, get out your computer, however you decide to write, and tell us what is good at your college or university. I'll tell you what's good in my world right now is that I have a first-time guest co-host with me, and she is, I'd say she's ready to go. The look on her face is communicating that she's ready. I'm going to bring her in right now. Ladies and gentlemen, her name is Paige Keller. She's the VP of Academic Relations at NAC. How are you, Paige? See, I already messed it up.
I am well. How are you today, Joe?
I am living the dream, Paige. How are you doing?
Same. Happy
Where
to be
are you in the
here.
world, Paige? Where are you?
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina.
That's on the water, isn't it, Charleston?
It is. My house is not physically on the water, but I'm a short distance from it.
All right. Well, then it's probably nice and sunny and sticky down there this time of year. It might be
Gorgeous.
Cool. It might be cool.
The stickiness is going away, which is fabulous.
Speaking of sticky, I love college presidents that come back on the EdUp Experience, because once we get you once, we're going to get you again, and we're not going to stop until we do. And we've got another president with us today. In fact, I found out he was speaking at a conference where I was, and I was on the agenda. I'm like, I got to go meet this guy. I got to go meet him. So I burst into the room, and before he could even turn to see who I was, I stepped up on him. I was like, hey, Rick, what's going on? And I already just gave the name of my guest away, but he's like, who are you? And he's looking at my badge to try to place me. So it took him a minute to just realize that I wasn't some crazy person that I had come in to get him. But he is doing incredible work, and he's written a book that he's going to tell us about, and all things going on at this college or university. I'll give you a hint. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Dr. Rick Muma. He is the president at Wichita State University, the Shockers. Rick, welcome back to an EdUp. Mike, how are you?
All right. How are you doing, Joe? It's good to be back.
This is lunacy.
That's not. It's like getting you back here is, in my mind, is lunacy, because you're really doing special things at Wichita, and at Wichita State. You have so many great initiatives going on. You're And Eldon and I were talking about you the other day, and I said, "Oh, Rick's coming back on," and Eldon goes, "Yeah, man, he's just a cool dude. He's just a cool dude." So I'm doing great, but I want to know how you're doing. And you got a pretty hard job these days, but how are all things Wichita State?
We're doing really good. But before I talk about that, I just am really impressed that you have interviewed the most presidents in the world. I didn't know that there was that kind of a ranking. And
well, I made it up. I figured there can't be anybody else that would be as insane and crazy to interview 425 college presidents. So I have to believe I've interviewed more college presidents than anyone in the world. I did try to verify it, and there wasn't anything close. So it's made up, but also I think it might be true.
Yeah, well, you need to get involved in some of those ranking systems and get connected there. Just to get back to your question, Wichita State, we're doing really good. We have continued to grow as an institution. Our three priorities are all around affordability and access, feeding the talent pipeline, and increasing economic prosperity. And that drives us every day. And so in terms of the first one, the affordability and access, our enrollment's as high as it's ever been in the 130-year history of the university.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and we are really hyper-focused on making sure our students have the appropriate applied learning experience so they can go on and be work ready when they graduate. So we've talked last time about our innovation campus. We have about 12,000 students now connected to those partners and others in our community, making almost $40 million a year as students. So they're not only earning those dollars, but they're applying those skills in real world situations right here on our campus and our community. And that's important for your listeners to understand, because many of our students are low income, first generation, disadvantaged in some way, and they need additional resources to help get them to school, but also stay here. And then our research, we just surpassed $600 million in research awards this past fiscal year. And it's going to continue to grow. And many of those research projects are employing our students, particularly our undergraduate students. And so they're getting this hands-on experience like no other student is getting. So it's the reason why I wrote the book, to tell that story.
Amazing.
Paige, I'm going to pass it to you in a second, but I do want to get to the book, but I want to kind of save that for a little bit. You when I heard you talking at ASCU, the conference we were both at, you were talking about the Innovation Campus pretty in depth and the work that you're doing there. What is the Innovation Campus? How might a casual listener of this podcast understand what it is and what impact it's having on your regional area?
Yeah, well, it's actually a part of our campus. It was developed about 10 years ago to pit industry right in the middle of everything with our students. We want our students to be able to have these experiences the moment they show up on campus, even if they don't even know their major, because we think there's value in helping them to start professionalizing. But what it is a mixture of public-private partnerships. We have over 50 companies. The first company that moved to our campus was Airbus. They have their North American engineering offices located on our campus. And that initial company that decided, that's a big deal, Airbus, right? I mean, it's a big company, a global company. That really kind of opened up the floodgates. And now we have 50 companies. So we have Deloitte Smart Factory, we have NetApp, we have Spirit Aerosystems, we have Textron, Dassault Systems. We have gone in heavy into criminal justice research with the ATF. And so there's a whole ecosystem around criminal justice that's forming on the Innovation Campus. So it's a rich, dynamic collection of our academic buildings and our research facilities with these private businesses, some public businesses, but also lifestyle kinds of businesses on our campus. Restaurants. We have the YMCA. partnership that we developed with them, and they built in cooperation with us a wellness center for students, and all of our students have access to the YMCA as part of their experience on campus. So it's just developed sort of organically, but really has been a major driver of who we are as an institution.
All right, Paige, you're on.
There are so many things you've said, President Muma, that I want to circle back to, but before I do, I wanted to give you a little bit of my background so you'll understand where I'm coming from when I'm asking the questions that I have for you. First, as Joe mentioned, I'm at NAC now, and I'm Vice President of Academic Relations. I joined the team 3 years ago, but prior to that, I worked on a college campus for 25 years, always under the umbrella of academic fairs, and my work always focused on learning assistance and peer education. Before NAC, I was the founding director of a Center for Excellence in Peer Education on my campus. And that really did shape my passion for student-centered support. And that everything you've said today so far really focuses on that student-centered support. And at NAC, I get to do that same work at scale. And we can talk about NAC after the podcast if you want, but one of the things that you were talking about that when you were talking about the number of jobs and experiential learning opportunities you've created on your campus and the number of dollars put into the students' pockets, my thoughts kept going back to, this is one of the largest scale, high impact educational practices that I've heard of. And I presume you know of Dr. George Koo and you know about high impact practices. Mm-hmm. Is that a conversation that you're having on your campus? Is scaling high impact practices even more so that it can influence students' persistence and completion rates?
Well, yeah, our whole variety of applied learning is a high impact practice. And we at the institution believe that every one of our students should have a paid experience, a paid employment experience, not, working in an office and making copies or coffee or, just being a receptionist type employee. We have students who do that as well, but we want our students to have an additional experience, which is something that they can, apply their skills and that they're learning in the classroom into a real world setting. And all of our students in every major in campus has this requirement before they graduate. They cannot graduate until they have that. And so we have all kinds of intentional activities to help with that, and not just programmatic things, but the way we have designed our campus. So several years ago, we developed something to help facilitate this, something called the Shocker Career Accelerator. And what that is a sort of a lot of people don't like me to describe it this way, but I think it helps understand. It's kind of a campus employment agency where we recruit students for jobs, help them select the location they want to be in, kind of onboard them, hire them, take care of all the payroll and all those sorts of things, and then deploy them into those business industry partners. And then we monitor them if there needs to be some changes, and we can help do that. And the industry partner doesn't have to spend a lot of time worrying about some of these back office things. We just recently opened a new home for the Shocker Career Accelerator, which is at the Marcus Welcome Center where our admissions office is. And the reason why we put that there is because when students come here to Wichita State to find out what it means to be a Shocker, in the admissions office and the Welcome Center, we want them to be able to see, obviously, the majors and what it takes to get admitted to the university. But we've created an environment, kind of a walk that they go on in that facility into the Shocker Career Accelerator, which opens up onto the innovation campus, and they can see all these opportunities. I talk to parents all the time. Why are you interested in sending your son or daughter here? And it's because of that experience. It's very intentional. And we encourage students as freshmen to get a job, even if they don't know their major. And a lot of people go, well, that's crazy, Rick. They don't even know anything. Yes, students know a lot coming out of high school. Many of them could probably reprogram our entire ERP system with their knowledge in IT. And so they could get a job working with one of the companies in the IT area, or they could do coding, or they could do modeling on a digital twin project that we have with the Department of Defense. These are the things that they're doing. And they may or may not be majoring in computer science or computer engineering. They might be a linguistics major. They might be a history major. That whole ecosystem that we've created around students getting connected to job experiences that will help them throughout their career as a student, and then get a job many times with those employers that they're working with as a student, is really the secret sauce behind what we're doing here at the university. It's a retention tool, it's a learning tool, and it's a paid experience for them, which is so important to our student body.
That's incredible. Yeah, back to the high impact practice conversation, one of the things, Dr. George Koo, he is our senior advisor at NAC. So I have the opportunity to meet with him, present with him, co-write with him. He and I have developed a really nice working relationship, but every time he speaks, every time I interact with him, I'm always just pulled into his rhetoric on the value of high impact practices. And of course, we know that they have those cumulative additive effects. So the more high impact experiences students have, the more likely they are to be retained and persist. But something else he often talks about, and I'm wondering if you see this on campus, is that these engagement in these high impact activities helps to shrink the psychological size of the institution. So no matter the size of the population or the campus, being involved in these shrinks the psychological size of the institution. Do you see that on your campus?
Yeah, I mean, I think what he's talking about is, sometimes when students go to school, everything that's available to them is so overwhelming. But if they get connected into some area of interest, or with an employer in our case, or with a faculty member, or the whole system becomes more manageable for them. I'm thinking that's what I may not be saying it exactly the same way.
You are. It does. It helps to make it seem like a smaller place, because they have more connections, more meaningful connections, right, with those employers, with faculty, with advisors, with other students who might be engaging in the same types of activities.
This is the other thing that parents tell me. So, how students come out of high school, some of them are shy, some of them are just don't have a lot of confidence. They come to college and, become sort of a wallflower and just, sometimes disappear. And I have had so many conversations with parents that said, my son or daughter, I didn't think they were going to be able to even go to college or make it in college. And they showed up at Wichita State, you all wrapped around them, whether at the Shocker Crew Accelerator or the Shocker Success Center, and they're thriving now. And it's because of that high impact practice concept that you're talking about that is really what makes that work. And, the book that I wrote, and I know we're going to get to that in a second, the name of the book is called Student-Centered, Innovation-Driven, and it really does capture what you're talking about, I think, in terms of those practices.
Like a true podcast host, which Rick hosts his own podcast. The segue from what he was talking about into the book was so professionally done that I don't even need to do anything. Rick, you're doing my job for me, but you wrote a book. The first question is, how do you run this giant university and have time to write a book? But maybe that's not, maybe you could tell a short story there. Maybe it's easy because you're rolling through these things in your mind all the time, and you probably have just like sticky notes all over your office or something. But why did you write the book?
You have sticky notes here.
You do?
Yeah, I do. And people tease me about that because everybody's got iPads and all these other things to keep track of stuff. I need sticky notes to do that.
He had to, just so everybody knows, he literally pulled up sticky notes. They were that close to his body that he showed us all on camera that he had them.
So, I have a great team. I mentioned earlier our 3 priorities. That's all I talk about. That's all we talk about. That's what drives us every day. So I don't have to worry about whether the executive team, other leadership people on campus are moving forward in those priorities. So that helps a lot. It's not like I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs because they're doing the work. I always kind of joke. All I do is just have meetings and making sure that we're continuing to talk through on those priorities. But it took a little while to put the book together. So I'm not lying. It wasn't like we did this overnight. About 2.5 years we worked on it. But it's a fun story to tell because it's a good story. And I wanted to tell the story from my vantage point. I've been associated with the university for 50 years. I was born here in Wichita, but I moved away and grew up in Houston. But my grandparents worked on campus. And so every summer I was up here romping around on campus and hearing about shockers and faculty. And some of them are still here today. And got really connected that way. And then coincidentally, there was a position available 30 years ago as a faculty member, and I came here. And then one day I woke up and I was the president. So I'm telling the story from that sort of vantage point, through my lens of what I've seen over the last several years. And so in that respect, it was an easy story to tell.
I remember these weird things from my interviews. I interviewed you. I had to look this up, so this isn't from memory, but I interviewed you in March of 22, which I think was before your 1-year anniversary there. And I remember you saying, keep your message simple and consistent. Like there was leadership, that was your leadership advice to other leaders. And then to hear you repeat that and say, here are the 3 things I talk about and the only 3 things I talk about, it just sort of brings it full circle that's part of your leadership ethos. And why is it so important to keep things simple as a leader and consistent as the leader of the university? And how does that message give you the opportunity to innovate to the point where you can write this book about everything? Because this story that you're telling is not a simple story. It's a very complex story of a giant university doing amazing things. So keep your message simple, but complex operations.
Well, my background is in public health. I also got my career start as a physician assistant in Texas, and took care of patients in infectious disease practice for the first part of my career. So taking care of patients and trying to make sure that they understand what the next step is to keep it simple. So I kind of learned that and I kind of draw on that. And then public health, that's all about program planning and evaluation to make sure that you evaluate whether a certain intervention in the population is working or not, like seat belts that people wear in the cars now. Everybody wears a seatbelt, or some other intervention that is important to the population in general. So I learned early on that keeping it simple is important, but also you got to have a plan. You got to have some goals. You got to have, and that's not novel, but it does work. And when you don't have clear direction, and people get confused, and if you start talking about other things that don't really quite align with that, then they're going off on a little tangent over here that doesn't really match. And so I try to use that as kind of guardrails. When someone said, well, we want to do this, well, I said, that's really not part of our strategic plan and fitting into our priorities. So, how can we put that in there or make it align, or we need to come back over here and we more closely align with what we're doing as an institution, and that works. And that's always worked as long as I've been in higher education in any kind of setting I've been in. So what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, because I asked really complex questions that no one can remember. But the book is about complexity in a way, because you talk about, by the way, I did order it, warts and all, and making sure you're exposing what's working and what's not. And you have a very complex business that you're running there. Wichita State has many areas. So keeping the message simple, but also documenting the complexity, a good complexity, right? I don't say that in a bad way, of Wichita State in the book.
Yeah, and part of the reason for the book is for historical context and historical reasons, to make sure people understood kind of how all this came together. And for other people who are trying to do something similar, they'd have that kind of a roadmap to look at. But I wanted to write a book that was warts and all. I didn't want to do this self-congratulatory, everything is perfect, because we have done a 180 at this institution, and it's been hard. It's still hard, and it's going to continue to be hard, and maybe harder as we move forward. Who knows? But I wanted people to understand that, and I wanted to acknowledge that too, because not everybody's been happy about it. Not everybody here at the university, in our external environment, but I think they do understand it now. They didn't when we first started down the path of applied learning for every student, developing public-private partnerships on the innovation campus. That was a really difficult transition at the university, and the book, I think, provides a pretty good roadmap. It provides opportunities for individuals to see what the questions might be or should be asked, and for me to reflect on some of those questions and on what we did well and what we did not do well. I think that's important for people to see and understand. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers that second question, but I think it might get pretty close.
Epic.
Paige?
The background noises are fun. I'm enjoying those.
I haven't even hit I've got hundreds of those, but we'll save some of them for another day.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to them. I wanted to go back to talking about your background and where your career started as a physician assistant. And you talked a little bit about how it's informed your leadership style, but I'm wondering, do you think that your applied clinical and public health background helps you connect differently with students?
Let's go
to insightsedu.com. Remember that URL, because let's be honest, how much of what you're doing at work right now is actually working? It's time to inject fresh ideas and effective strategies. And Insights EDU is for these leaders that want to see results. The conversations are direct. The sessions are outstanding. And the people in the room are there to solve real problems, not protect the status quo. Insights EDU 2026 is February 17 to 19 in Fort Lauderdale. No fluff, no recycled playbooks, just what works now. Register today at insightsedu.com.
Attention.
It's time to register for Lucian Live, April 19th through 22nd, 2026 in Denver, Colorado, advancing infinite possibilities. And it's higher education without limits. Don't just keep up with change, lead it. Higher ed leaders from around the world are coming together at Lucian Live 2026. Across 4 unforgettable days, you'll discover new ways to meet students where they are and make the most of your technology through inspiring sessions and hands-on demos. Together, we're leveraging AI to create deeper human connections, support every student's journey, and open doors to lifelong learning. See you in Denver. Register now at elive.elucian.com.
I think it does. I don't know how much your listeners know about the PA profession, but it started in 1967, almost 60 years ago. And the reason why it started as a profession is there was a shortage of primary care providers in our country, and there was all these individuals in the military, particularly those that are coming out of the Vietnam conflict and previous to that had all this very high level expertise, but nowhere to go. So they developed the PA profession for those individuals, and it branched out beyond that. And it is very applied in nature. So what I'm trying to get at here is that literally when I went to school, the profession was only 20 years old. No one knew a PA, cleaned out bedpans or did open heart surgery. And so people understand that now better because PAs are more prevalent in the industry. But literally, it was see one, do one, teach one. Very applied in nature, very apprenticeship oriented kind of a discipline. And, not different from physicians. Physicians really didn't start getting the kind of education that they get today until more recent times, 1900s, in that time frame when there was lots of diseases that were being recognized in our country, and infections and antibiotics were developed to treat those. So anyway, not much different from that early education for physicians. I think the other thing, Paige, that really makes me a little different is I am a product of the same kind of student that is here, a product of public education, particularly urban public education, like we have at Wichita State. I started at a community college. I worked full time. I just kind of scrape by in all different kinds of ways. And it's really how a lot of the students that attend Wichita State are. And I do have a lot of sympathy, but more importantly, a lot of empathy for students who are here at this institution. And I think that makes a difference. That is helpful. And I'm constantly meeting with students, having lunches at the president's residence all the time. I'm inviting just different groups of students to hear what's going on and hear their stories. And but that very applied kind of aspect where I came from, I think really does help me understand some of the experiences that would be helpful for them, particularly the ones that we talked about already on the innovation campus, for sure.
Yeah, and all of that collectively, it not only helps to inform your leadership practices, but also it makes you, even as president of the university, that much more relatable to students. Yeah. And I think they recognize that.
Yeah, one of our priorities is accessibility and affordability. That's not only accessibility for students to come into the institution, but it's also accessibility to us as individuals. And I am who I am, like what you're hearing now, and who I am is not any different from the next conversation I have with the student. I think that's important for them to see me and my leadership team in that same kind of light.
I love that, and I love your approach. Joe?
Yeah, I think that accessibility is important, but I think it's also authenticity too. Like, you could walk into somebody's office if they're accessible and they could be very stiff and not treat you the right way. You're very down to earth. You've got a big job. You're serving thousands, tens of thousands of students. What keeps you, because, Rick, we recently at the conference we attended, one of the themes was, this job's really hard and presidents can burn out and they have to take care of themselves. How do you keep yourself focused without sort of hitting those moments where you go, ugh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that too, because hasn't the number of years a person serves in the president role decreased in recent years?
Yeah, by almost 4 years, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's like four and change. It used to be 8.
Yeah.
Well, here's another thing that I learned as a provider, and just for more context, is that when I started as a PA, it was in 1985. So that tells you how old I am. And it was the very beginning of the HIV epidemic. And so I was just thrown, like all of my classmates and people where I worked at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, which Galveston, Houston, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, those were all kind of the hotbeds of HIV when it was first recognized as an illness. And so that was what my practice was for 10 years in the very early days, where there was not a lot of options. But what I learned in that and taking care of patients is to be where they were. So you have, if you can imagine this, different clinic rooms where you have patients are there to see you. We have someone who's doing okay today. We have someone in the next room who's not having a good day and having a reaction to a drug. And you have someone who is probably not going to be living too much longer. Me personally, I have to, as a clinician, to arrive to them as where they are, not where someone next in the next room is. And so that's what would be called a compartmentalization. So that's what I do. There's all kinds of things coming at me, and I have to be present for that particular issue. And sometimes it's a horrible issue that I've got to resolve, but then I got to go to the next issue. So that's kind of how I look at things. Also, I'm kind of an 80-20 guy. 80% of the time, things are probably going to be okay, but you're going to have a bad day. And just recognize that that's just part of the job. But what keeps me actually physically, I think, at where I need to be is I do exercise every day. I get up at 4:00 in the morning, and my spouse and we run around campus. It's about a 3 or 4 mile run, and there's no one out at 4:00 in the morning, and so we can see and do and run through things in areas that we don't normally get to do during the day, and enjoy the campus. And that's a very mind clearing thing to do. And when I don't do it, sometimes I have to miss it. I'm kind of cranky, and so that is one of the things that I try to do to keep myself and my mind in a good place.
4 a.m.
This is lunacy. This is lunacy.
No human gets up at 4 a.m. except for Rick.
Well, my spouse, he was raised on a farm here in Kansas. He still manages the family farm. And those people, all they do is work. Farmers, all they do is work. That's all they know how to do is work, and they do that very early in the morning. Matter of fact, if you go home for Christmas or Thanksgiving, that meal gets put on the table and you eat it real fast. And if you sit too long, they're looking at you about why you're not working.
So he's hearing the rooster before, even if it's not around, he's hearing it go off almost like an alarm clock in his head because he's been trained that way.
Yeah, he's very disciplined. So he's a good partner to have to keep me doing the things that I need to do to stay healthy.
And Paige, let me hand it back to you, but I want to ask one quick one. The metaphor of running, like not the metaphor, the actual running that you're doing, and you're running around the campus and you're exploring areas, taking this all the way back to the book. Is the book a map? Is it a map for me as a college president and how I might think about this on my campus? I mean, is it going to give me some kind of a path to follow, or maybe make me think about how I can create innovation, maybe amidst some negative inertia that exists, right? It's like I haven't met a president that doesn't get pushback from someone, faculty or otherwise. Tell me what I might expect when I pick up this book and read it.
Well, it's exactly why I wrote it, and the audience that I wrote it for were people who are trying to figure out what is a new way of thinking about moving forward at their university. It doesn't have to be a president, but someone who's thinking about these things. And every chapter has a little section at the end that basically outlines what we did well, what we could have done better, and some questions to consider on each one of those chapters for the reader to think about, or for a group is looking at that book together to think about. So it was written for that purpose primarily, but also to document what we did so people remember in 100 years, this is how we did this at the university. But that the primary audience is really someone in higher education that's trying to think how they might do things differently.
Love that. Paige, you have any more of those really detailed questions for Rick? Because he's ready.
I do. Keep in mind that I'm working at home and my dogs have just seen something out the front door. So if you hear some yapping.
That's real life. This is what we do here at EdUp. It just sort of comes out the way it's going to come out.
Well, there's a lawnmower going outside my window right now, or not lawnmower, leaf blower. They're picking up leaves today.
And I will say, before you ask, I'll say, just to bring this all around to all of us, I forgot, my wife texted me and asked me to turn the stove off for dinner. And that's why I had to leave this podcast quickly, because my phone was blowing up because I forgot to turn the stove off and may have ruined dinner. So back to you, Paige.
Life gets in the way. It always does. Well, I'm glad that Zoom has the ability to filter out some of those background noises now. But sort of to round out all of this, I think we have a few minutes left. You oversee so many major initiatives, and so much has changed even since you've taken over the presidency, from enrollment to student success, research growth, partnerships. How do you stay grounded in the individual student, individual faculty, individual staff member experience while still leading institutional change at scale?
Well, one of the things about me, I've been here for 30 years now. Hear your dog.
That's not a sound effect. That's real sound effects right there.
I've been here for 30 years, which is a blessing and a curse. I know everybody knows me, they know my issues, I know their issues, but one of the things that is helpful is I feel really connected to the campus and the employees here, and don't have any qualms about, just reaching out to them, stopping by, having conversations with them. And I try to really work really hard at that, making sure that I'm going to lots of different events across the spectrum, because we have fine arts, we have athletics, we have engineering, we have business, all the full range of colleges here. And I try to make sure that everybody sees that I'm paying attention to that. And, send simple emails when I get a list of grants that are funded each day by faculty, and I send a message back to them right away, every one of them, and say, congratulations. And I think that helps. I think people need to hear that kind of thing. And for students, I mentioned that earlier, I told our vice president for student affairs when I became president that I just didn't want to wake up one day and realize that I spent all my time here in Morrison Hall, which is our administration building, and hadn't had a chance to really get out and visit students. So we started having lunches at the president's residence, and to connect with those students and making sure that I understood what their issues were, hear what their celebrations are, hear what they want me to think about doing differently. And then most importantly for students, I wanted them to come over to the president's residence. So how many people got to go to the president's residence when they were a student, or did they even know that there was a residence? Not every university has a residence on its campus, but a lot of them do. And I wanted them to be able to see themselves in that environment, and because you have to see it to believe it, and just believe in yourself. So we have hosted, since I became president, I'm in my 5th year now, over 150 lunches over there. We've eaten a lot of food.
Hence the 4 a.m. running.
Exactly. That's why I got to do that. I decided, I have to eat at lunch, and I might as well do it with students. And let's have them over at the house, and Rick takes them on a tour of the whole house. They get to, we have an entertainment area, but he takes them on a tour, tells them the history of the house. It's, WPA project built back in the 30s. And they get to go through all the bedrooms and the closets and everything, and just to kind of see how we live there. And there's all kinds of artwork around the walls of the residence. It's really very expensive and important pieces. They get to see stuff like that. And so, to get back to your question, how do you kind of keep grounded and all that? These are some examples of things that I do. And I think that does point back to accessibility and just sharing who you are. And I think people appreciate that.
And before I pass it back to Joe, I just want to say that I think there is something to be said for you having been at the same institution for 30 years, because you entered into this presidency with an incredible amount of institutional knowledge, and you knew everyone or almost everyone already. So I think that that's so important. I was at the same institution for 25 years. So I felt that same, oh, maybe I should be trying this at different universities, but it was home for me. And I imagine you feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely.
The story of Rick running at 4 a.m. as a faculty member, tripping and falling, and then waking up as president is because that's the way he tells it. Something like, I tripped and fell and I was president one day.
Yeah, that is how I feel. In the book, I talk about that at the very end, and it is how I feel. It wasn't something I was aspiring to be. Just kind of, it's kind of the story of my life. When I was my first job at a grocery store, I was walking into the grocery store, applying for a job as a sacker, and the manager just lost an employee. Can you start now? And I said, well, sure. Kind of like that.
You know, there is something to be said for that. Like, what the answer is yes. What's the question, right? Sometimes if you are just, I was telling my son the other day, you got to stay ready to be ready, right? Yeah. Like there's this idea that we just have to be ready all the time. And as a college president, there is no other job in higher ed where you have to be that ready all the time. Knowing the number of things that can come at you, it is a marvel to see people who really enjoy the job, because I think it's tough, and so there are so many people that are leaving the job or whatever else. So it's so much respect to you, Rick, in the job you're doing. What else do you want to say about Wichita State University? Anything else on your mind, your work?
Well, I just wanted to follow up what you were just saying, and that is one of my messages to students is. Because they asked me, well, how did you get to be a president? And do you actually live here at this president's? They're very intrigued by the whole thing. And so I tell them about the fact that you really needed to take advantage of every opportunity and walk through that door when you're given that opportunity. You can always turn back around and walk back out and do something different. But if you don't walk through the door, you're going to miss an opportunity potentially. So that is a main message. As in terms of the university, I'm really very honored to be able to help lead it, and I do that with a great team. I'm not doing this by myself. Every day, have very, very smart people around me who are moving forward these priorities, and it's because of them and everybody on this campus is the reason why we're experiencing successes. Not that we don't have challenges, we do. I'd be lying if we don't, but we have a great team that is able to work through those for the benefit of the entire university, and I'm really proud of that.
Rick, give us a couple plugs. Tell us about the podcast, where we might listen. Where do we pick up? Where's the best place to pick up the book? There's lots of places to pick up a book, and then there's the best place to pick up the book that I know of. Well,
I think you can get a discount. I hope I'm saying that correctly. My handler is here on this podcast listening to what I'm saying here. But if you go to wichita.edu/book, that will take you to a website where you can get a discounted version. If you don't do that, you can find it at Amazon or anywhere they sell books. It's fairly affordable. I think it's low 30s. You can also get a Kindle version of it as well.
And let me interrupt you and say that if I don't know if this is true of your book, but if you go to where the publisher is, it works out better for the author in most instances. So that's at kansaspress.ku.edu, and you can search for the book, and it's better for Rick. Let's make sure we take care of our colleagues in higher ed.
Well, and that's that wichita.edu/book takes you to that site. Yeah. So that's how you can find the book. We also have a podcast that comes out once a month associated with my monthly newsletter that is basically a collection of interviews of shockers or closely shockers. Yes, Just for instance, I interviewed one of our fine arts alums, Joyce DiDonato. She is a world famous opera singer. And so that's the kind of individual that I'm trying to showcase, to talk about their experience here with our listeners so they can see the full range of what we do here at the university. So there's a whole eclectic collection of Shocker alums and Shocker supporters on the podcast.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Before we let everybody go, I do have to go to the judges on a scale of 0 to 100 and find out how well Paige did on her first co-hosting gig here. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Rick, what do you have to say here?
A+.
100%.
It sounds like a good grade, Paige. Well done. What do you think of this conversation?
So much. This was incredible. I have so many things that I wanted to continue in conversation with President Muma. And just quickly, at my age, I was approaching 50 when I started working on my PhD in higher education administration. And I am still working on it in the dissertation phase. And my dissertation is on public-private partnerships. It's an evaluation of the impact of public-private partnerships on student success outcomes. I think we might need to have one more interview, just us.
I think that would be true of you, Paige. I think you know exactly who to go to, and it's not me.
So, Paige, I just want to say, like Joe, you have a really good kind of a radio voice. So I just want to say that too.
Even with the slight Southern twang?
I'm not picking up on that. I have a little bit of that too.
Okay, maybe we just cancel each other out.
I can hear it in both you guys as a Northeasterner here. But the dog sound effects were fantastic, Paige. Well done with your sound machine at home. Ladies and gentlemen, it literally is a true honor to know this man and to learn about the work he's doing in higher education. Please pick up his book. And you got all the links. I'm not going to give them to you again. Check out the podcast, Student-Centered, Innovation-Driven, by the one, the only, Dr. Rick Muma. He's the president of Wichita State University, and you just EdUp'd.
Attention.
Let's talk for a second. Higher ed is moving fast, and not everything we're doing is keeping pace. Either you move with the future, or you get left behind. Insights EDU is where leaders find out what actually works. February 17th to 19th in Fort Lauderdale. Register at insightsedu.com. Ellucian Live 2026, April 19th through 22nd in beautiful Denver, Colorado. Advancing infinite possibilities. And it's higher education without limits. Don't just keep up with change, lead it. Higher education leaders from around the world are coming together at Ellucian Live 2026. Across 4 unforgettable days, discover new ways to meet students where they are and make the most of your technology through inspiring sessions and hands-on demos. Together, we're leveraging AI to create deeper human connections, support every student's journey, and open doors to lifelong learning. See you in Denver. Register now at elive.ellucian.com. It's going to be
Amazing.